There were eggshells in the sink, and no footprints in the snow. I found the listing on Airbnb by accident, which I guess should have been my first red flag. The whole trip was last minute. My conference in Pittsburgh got rescheduled, and I didn't feel like shelling out $200 a night for a city hotel. The sun was already dipping behind the trees by the time I got off the main road and onto a gravel path that crunched under my tires like dry bones. The woods on either side looked skeletal bare trees dusted with snow, frozen fields that stretched into nothing. Not just winter cold, but the kind of bone-deep chill you only feel in a building that hasn't even lived in for a while. The air had that musty, sour smell of disuse. I shut the door behind me and called out, "Hello?" like an idiot, even though I already knew no one was there. The snow outside was pristine. No tire tracks but mine. No boot prints. No paw prints. Mostly a few rusted tools, a broken shovel, and a large plastic bucket with what looked like stained rags inside. I didn't check. I didn't want to. I backed away and returned to the house. Every sound was amplified in the quiet, every groan of the wood, every gust of wind against the siding. Around 2:13 a.m., I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. The porch swing. It creaked. Once, then again. I sat up in bed and stared at the bedroom door, heart thundering in my ears. The wind outside had died an hour ago. That swing only moved when someone sat on it. Just a clean white sheet stretching from the porch to the woods and beyond. I walked the perimeter of the house, heart pounding, trying to find some explanation. A shed sat about 30 yards out behind the barn, its door swaying open just a crack. I don't know what made me walk toward its stupidity, maybe, or the need to know, but the closer I got, the colder the wind seemed to grow. The smell of rot was stronger here, clinging to the back of my throat. I pushed the shed door open with the tip of my boot. The living room was neatly arranged, dustless even. Couch with throw pillows, fireplace stacked with unburned logs, a worn rug that looked recently vacuumed. Lock the door, sleep, and leave first thing in the morning. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I just watched too many horror movies. Then, slowly, I got up and crept to the window. The moon cast a pale light across the yard, and there, clear as day, the swing rocked forward and back, forward, back. No one was in it, but it moved with the steady rhythm of something recently departed. I found a space heater in the closet and plugged it in next to the bed, and drove until I hit a gas station with working lights and a shaky cell signal. I didn't message the host. I didn't leave a review. I don't even know if that listing still exists. But every now and then I check Airbnb. I scroll past dozens of cozy country homes and wonder how many others walked into someone else and finished life and left just before it started again. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had left in a hurry. That breakfast in the sink hadn't been abandoned. It had been interrupted. But everything was too still, like a staged open house. Nothing had weight. Nothing felt touched. There were no other houses, no signs, not even a mailbox. Some broken clean in half, others crushed into jagged shards. A plate sat beside the sink, with streaks of dried yolk clinging to its surface, and a fork rested on top, crusted over. It was like someone had made eggs that morning and just left. The smell hit me next, not strong but noticeable. Rotten food, faint but clinging. I opened the fridge. Inside were 2 cartons of milk, both expired, and a bowl of something unidentifiable that had grown a fuzzy green coat. My stomach turned. The host instructions said the place was cleaned weekly. This hadn't been touched in weeks. Just a narrow path and a sagging wooden fence that led to the farmhouse sitting quietly in the center of an empty clearing. Everything else looked undisturbed. Cabinets closed, counters clean. But the contrast between the staged perfection of the house and that rotting breakfast made my skin crawl. I pulled out my phone to message the host, but the app wouldn't load. No bars, no Wi-Fi. I moved around the room, lifted my phone in the air, walked toward the hallway. Nothing. I made my way to the bedroom. It was small, with a twin bed, a quilt folded neatly at the foot. He knew they were in the basement before they ever told him. They'd been dating for 4 years when Chelsea surprised Devin with a weekend getaway. Quiet Airbnb just outside the mountains, tucked far enough from town that they could finally unplug. The listing was called The Lodge, but it wasn't really a lodge. More like a converted multi-unit rental, a massive creaky house with 3 floors, each divided into separate guest suites. It had great reviews, a decent price, and most importantly, privacy. The host had emailed them the code the morning of check-in, along with directions and a note that read, "I won't be home, but make yourself comfortable. Suite 2 is all yours." They arrived late in the afternoon, just before the sun dipped behind the hills. Within a minute, another message came through. "No worries. You can stay there if it's easier. Just odd it's usually locked." Suite 2 was at the top of the stairs, and inside was a cleaner, brighter version of the basement. Nicer furniture, better lighting, a proper fireplace. Without speaking, they agreed to move up. Devin carried the bags while Chelsea did a sweep of the kitchen drawers. Everything seemed fine, if not a little too neat. It was as if the room had been set just minutes ago. The property was even bigger than the pictures showed, sitting in the middle of a gravel driveway surrounded by bare trees. The doorknob had started to rattle just slightly. It stopped when they looked at it. They checked the hallway. Nothing. No voices. No footsteps. Just a low hum of the overhead light in the corridor, just distant and soft. Then another, louder, closer, followed by scratching sounds beneath the floorboards, as if paws were skittering along the wooden beams. Devin stood frozen in the center of the room, straining to listen. They couldn't even hear their own footsteps echo anymore. Devin tried the door, but the knob wouldn't turn. It wasn't locked, it just wouldn't move, as if someone on the other side was holding it steady. Chelsea moved toward the window and pulled back the curtain. He didn't move. He was staring at the vent, because that's where the barking was now. From behind the grate, something was panting loud, shallow breaths. Not barking anymore, breathing, as if something had finally found them and was waiting. There were no cars outside, no kennels, no sign of any dog. They sprinted down the hallway and out into the freezing night, running until the house was just a shadow in the trees. When they finally got to the car and peeled down the gravel driveway, neither of them spoke. They didn't go back for their things. They didn't answer the host's final message, which arrived the next morning at 4:09 a.m. timestamped, 3 hours after they fled. Yet the barking continued, sometimes far, sometimes close, always circling, as if the sound itself didn't have a source. There were no cameras visible, nothing in the smoke detectors. No blinking lights, no obvious microphones. But somehow the host knew they had moved upstairs. He wasn't guessing. He knew. It looked quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but charming in an eerie kind of way, like something out of an old novel. All shadows and shuttered windows. Devin keyed in the code and opened the heavy front door, which led into a wide wood-paneled hallway. There were stairs at both ends, one up, one down, and a long corridor in between with several unmarked doors. The cozy charm of the place twisted into something else. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the house now sounded deliberate, like the building was listening back. They tried to distract themselves by watching a movie on Devin's laptop, but the Wi-Fi cut out halfway through. No cell signal, no bars, just the flickering of a buffering screen and the growing sense that they weren't alone. The instructions hadn't said which floor Suite 2 was on, just that it would be unlocked. Chelsea suggested they check the basement level first, and sure enough, the first door they tried downstairs opened easily. Inside was a simple but spacious room, queen bed, a small kitchenette, a warm sofa. and a few faded landscape paintings hung crooked on the walls. It was a little musty, but warm enough, and after a long drive, neither of them felt like climbing stairs with luggage. They brought in their bags, ordered takeout, and settled in for a quiet night. It wasn't until after dinner that the first email came. "Hey," the host wrote casually. "You're in the basement suite. That's not the one you booked." Devin blinked at the screen, then looked at Chelsea. They hadn't told him. No one was supposed to be watching. And if he wasn't home, how did he know? Devin wrote back, saying there were no labels on the doors, and that this was the only one unlocked. Chelsea's face went pale. Devin asked her what was wrong, and she just pointed toward the door. Trying to shake it off, they decided to go upstairs to see if their actual suite had been unlocked too. It had. They were brushing their teeth in the bathroom when the second email came. "Upstairs now? Just checking." Devin's mouth went dry. He showed Chelsea the screen. Her hand trembled. Neither of them had sent another message. They both stopped smiling after that. Around 1:30 a.m., it started. At first, it was faint, a single bark. Not loud, not aggressive. Then the worst part came. The heater shut off. The room went silent. Not quiet silent. Like the walls had sealed themselves shut. Chelsea backed into the corner and whispered Devin's name, her voice thin with panic. They left everything. Phones, backpacks, wallets. Devin kicked the door until it gave. "Hope you enjoyed your stay. The dogs always like company. Ask ChatGPT." Taylor Fritz and Morgan Riddle had been in London for less than 48 hours when it happened. It was supposed to be a break, well, as much of a break as a professional tennis player can take during a tournament week. At first, she thought she dreamt the noise an almost metallic click, like something brushing the inside of the front door's lock. She listened harder, holding her breath, trying to separate real sound from sleep-deep haze. Then it came again, a scratch. He stood just behind the edge of the entryway wall, breath shallow, ears straining for any new sound. The intruder jiggled the lock once more, then paused, almost like they were listening back. Then came a low knock, 3 taps, not loud, not frantic, calm, too calm. A slow jiggle, like someone testing the handle. The room was dark, save for the soft amber glow from the hallway light they'd left on out of habit. The hallway outside was empty. No face. No footsteps. Nothing. And that night, behind that stylish blue door, Taylor and Morgan found out just how quickly a 5-star stay can become a silent standoff. But the handle twitched again, and this time there was a slight creak, as if the door had been cracked open, but it was still latched from inside. Taylor stood by the door with the racket in hand while Morgan scrolled endlessly through emergency numbers and Airbnb's contact options. The police were called, but by the time they arrived, there was no one to find. No cameras in the building, no clear entry point. Just a shaken couple in designer pajamas and a front door latch that now looked like the only thing standing between them and something far worse. That latch, that tiny metal hook, was the only thing keeping whoever was on the other side from walking straight in. She nudged Taylor, whispering his name, but it only took him a second to wake. The loud thwack echoed through the flat like a warning shot. Whoever was out there jolted back. The handle stopped moving. Silence fell again, long and thick. After about 10 seconds, they heard footsteps, slow, deliberate ones, retreating down the stairs. Then a door opened somewhere below. Then nothing. They both heard it now, no mistake. Someone was outside. Someone was trying to come in. They'd rented a stylish Airbnb in West London, nestled between rows of brick townhomes on a quiet, tree-lined street. Taylor made a quiet post about it later, framing it as an odd, almost break-in during their stay. But the truth was far less casual. They'd been hunted, if only for a moment, by someone who believed they could slip in unnoticed. Someone who may have known who they were or simply thought the flat looked unguarded. And while nothing was stolen and no harm was done, The illusion of safety that comes with passwords and high ratings had been cracked wide open. He didn't have a weapon, not really, but his gear bag sat just inside the bedroom door, and in it was his racket. Not exactly a baseball bat, but better than nothing. He grabbed it quietly and crept toward the living room, Morgan just behind him with her phone in her hand, struggling to get a signal. The door handle twisted sharply this time. A full rotation. Someone was actively trying to open the lock, as if they knew the code, but couldn't quite get it right. They froze, standing in silence, waiting to see if the person would leave. But the pressure didn't stop. It wasn't a drunk mistake or a confused neighbor. This was deliberate. It was one of those modernized flats, keypad entry, polished wood floors, minimalist furniture, and the kind of place that made you feel safe, even when you probably shouldn't. The listing had glowing reviews, secure neighborhood, easy check-in. Everything you'd expect when you're booking a high-rated stay in a major city. But no amount of 5-star comments could have prepared them for what would come in the early hours of that morning. It was just after 3 when Morgan stirred in bed. Taylor sat up, heart hammering against his ribs, his athlete reflexes already kicking in. Taylor moved toward the door slowly, racket gripped tightly in both hands. That's when Morgan turned on the flashlight from her phone and shined it toward the door's peephole. Taylor stepped forward, racket raised, and slammed it hard against the inside of the door. They didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, they packed up and checked into a hotel. Big cities have a way of disguising their danger in sleek corners and polite listings. London is no different. Ask ChatGPT.